The rain pounded against the windows of the office building as Olivia packed up her design tablet. Friday evening had arrived at last, and after a week of demanding clients and tight deadlines, she wanted nothing more than to get home, pour a glass of wine, and sink into her bathtub. Thunder cracked outside as she hurried toward the exit, cursing herself for forgetting an umbrella. By the time she reached her apartment building 10 blocks away, Olivia was soaked to the bone. Her blouse clung to her skin, and her dark hair hung in wet strands around her face. She pushed through the lobby doors, nodding politely to the security guard as she left small puddles with each step. The elevator doors were just starting to close when she called out, "Hold it, please." A strong hand shot out to stop the doors. As they reopened, Olivia's heart skipped a beat. It was him, the handsome neighbor from the 8th floor. She had seen him countless times over the 3 years they had lived in the same building, but their interactions had never gone beyond polite nods in the hallway or brief hellos by the mailboxes. "Thanks," she said, stepping inside and pressing the button for floor 7. She tried not to stare, but it was hard not to notice how his wet white shirt revealed the outline of his chest or how water droplets clung to his dark eyelashes. "Looks like we both got caught in it," he said with a warm smile, running a hand through his damp hair. "I'm Jack, by the way. I think we've been neighbors for years, but never properly introduced ourselves." "Olivia," she replied, feeling a flutter in her stomach as their eyes met. "I've seen you around. You're in 8C, right?" Jack nodded, seeming pleased that she had noticed him enough to know his apartment. The elevator began its ascent, and Olivia became acutely aware of how small the space was, how she could smell his cologne mixing with the scent of rain. She clutched her bag tighter, wondering why after 3 years of barely noticing this man, she suddenly couldn't stop thinking about how his lips curved when he smiled. Without warning, the elevator jerked to a violent stop. The lights flickered once, twice, then went completely dark. Olivia gasped, reaching out instinctively and grabbing what turned out to be Jack's arm. A moment later, dim emergency lights switched on, casting the small space in an eerie blue glow. "Are you okay?" Jack asked, his hand covering hers where it still gripped his arm. Olivia quickly let go, embarrassed by her reaction. "I'm fine, just startled." "What happened?" Jack pressed the emergency button, but nothing happened. He tried the call button next, which thankfully produced a crackling response. "This is building maintenance. We have a situation with the storm. Power's out in the whole block, and the backup generator is only running essential systems. Are you in immediate danger?" "No, we're fine," Jack answered, "just stuck between floors." "How long until we're moving again?" A long pause followed before the maintenance worker responded. "We're working on it, but with the storm, could be several hours, maybe morning. The city's emergency services are backed up with flooding calls." The line went dead, and Jack turned to Olivia with an apologetic look. "Well, looks like we're going to get to know each other a lot better." Olivia leaned against the wall, slipping off her wet shoes. "Of all the elevators in all the buildings in the city," she said with a nervous laugh, "I had to walk into this one." Jack smiled as he loosened his tie and sat down on the floor. "I don't know," he said softly, his eyes meeting hers with unexpected warmth. "I can think of worse places to be stranded, and worse company to be stranded with." Olivia felt heat rising to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the increasingly stuffy elevator. She slid down to sit across from him, their knees almost touching in the confined space. The storm raged outside, but inside this small box suspended between floors, a different kind of electricity was beginning to build. Time passed slowly in the dim blue light of the elevator. Olivia checked her phone and sighed. No signal. "Of course." Jack nodded, loosening his tie further and unbuttoning the top button of his shirt. "The walls of these old buildings are too thick. I never get reception in the elevator." An awkward silence fell between them. Olivia ran her fingers through her damp hair, trying to make herself look somewhat presentable. She was suddenly very aware of how her wet blouse must look, and crossed her arms over her chest. "So," Jack said, breaking the silence, "what do you do?" "I've always wondered." "I'm a graphic designer," Olivia replied, grateful for the conversation. "I work for a small agency downtown. What about you?" "Architect. My firm is just a few blocks from here, actually." He smiled, and in the blue light, his eyes seemed to sparkle. Maybe we've passed each other on the street before without knowing it. Maybe, Olivia said, returning his smile. It's funny how you can live so close to someone for years and never really meet them. Well, we're meeting now, Jack said, extending his hand formally, making her laugh. Properly this time. She took his hand and a small shock passed between them, whether from static electricity or something else, she couldn't tell. His hand was warm and strong, and he held hers a moment longer than necessary. The elevator shifted slightly and Olivia held her breath, hoping it would start moving again. Instead, it settled back into place with a groan of metal. I don't think we're going anywhere soon, Jack said, checking his watch. We might as well get comfortable. He removed his suit jacket and folded it neatly. Would you like this? Your clothes are still pretty wet. Olivia hesitated, then nodded. Thanks. It is getting a bit cold. He handed her the jacket, and she draped it over her shoulders, immediately enveloped in its warmth and the faint scent of his cologne. It was oddly intimate wearing his clothing, and she felt a flutter in her stomach. Do you have any plans for the weekend? Jack asked, leaning back against the wall, his long legs stretched out beside her. Nothing special. Just catching up on sleep and some personal design projects. You. I was supposed to have dinner with friends tomorrow, but after this, he gestured around them at the elevator. I might need a rain check. They both laughed and Olivia felt herself relaxing. The initial awkwardness was giving way to something else, a strange comfort in his presence. You know that bakery on the corner? Jack asked suddenly. The one with the blue awning? With the amazing cinnamon rolls? I love that place. Me too. I go there every Sunday morning. Their coffee is the best in the neighborhood. I usually go on Saturday afternoons, Olivia said. No wonder we never run into each other there. We should change that sometime, Jack said, his voice softer. Then quickly, as if afraid he'd been too forward. I mean, if you want to. Olivia felt a warm flutter in her chest. I'd like that. As the hours passed, they discovered more shared interests, obscure films they both loved, a passion for travel, favorite spots in the city. With each revelation, the space between them seemed to shrink, both physically and emotionally. I can't believe we've lived in the same building for 3 years and never had a real conversation, Olivia said, now sitting beside him against the wall, their shoulders almost touching. I've noticed you, Jack admitted, looking down at his hands. Many times, actually. I just never knew how to approach you without seeming like a creep. Olivia turned to look at him, surprised by his honesty. Really? Really, he said, meeting her gaze. I even started taking the elevator more often, hoping to run into you. Well, she said with a small smile, it finally worked. Their eyes locked, and Olivia became intensely aware of how close they were sitting, how easy it would be to lean just a little closer. The air between them felt charged with possibility. Jack's phone suddenly lit up with a notification, breaking the moment. Look at that, he said, showing her the screen. A message from the building manager. They're saying it could be morning before the power is fully restored. Olivia swallowed hard, her heart racing. I guess we're in for a long night. I guess we are, Jack replied, his voice low and warm in the quiet elevator. When he looked at her again, there was something new in his eyes, something that made Olivia think that being trapped might not be such a bad thing after all. Midnight came and went. The small digital clock on the elevator panel blinked 17 a.m., its red numbers the only splash of color in the blue-tinted space. As the hours passed, the air in the elevator had grown warm and stuffy. The building's backup generator kept the emergency lights on, but did nothing for the ventilation system. Is it getting hot in here, or is it just me? Olivia asked, removing Jack's jacket from her shoulders. Her clothes had dried, but now she felt uncomfortably warm. Definitely not just you, Jack said, rolling up his sleeves to reveal strong forearms. The air circulation must be off with the power out. Olivia tried not to stare as he unbuttoned another button on his shirt. She fanned herself with her hand, pulling her hair up off her neck. Some romantic evening, huh? She joked, then immediately blushed at her choice of words. Jack smiled, his eyes lingering on her face. Actually, I've had worse dates. Is that what this is? A date? Olivia asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Well, we've covered favorite foods, movies, and childhood pets. That's more than I usually get to on a first date. His smile widened, though the setting is a bit unconventional. Olivia laughed, adjusting her position. She had been sitting for so long that her legs were starting to cramp. She winced as she stretched them out. "Are you okay?" Jack asked, noticing her discomfort. "Just a muscle cramp. I'm not used to sitting on hard floors for hours." "Here, let me," Jack said, moving closer. "I used to get leg cramps all the time when I played soccer. May I?" Olivia hesitated, then nodded. Jack gently took her calf in his hands and began to massage the tight muscle. His touch was firm but gentle, his fingers working out the knot with practiced ease. Olivia bit her lip, trying to ignore how good it felt to have his hands on her. "Better?" he asked, his voice lower than before. "Much," she replied, her own voice barely above a whisper. When she looked up, his face was much closer than she expected. In the dim light, his eyes were dark and intense. Neither moved away. The air between them seemed to crackle with tension. "Olivia," Jack said softly, his hand now resting lightly on her leg. "I've been wanting to talk to you for 3 years. Now that I have, I can't help thinking." "Thinking what?" she asked, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. "That maybe getting stuck in this elevator wasn't such bad luck after all." Without thinking, Olivia reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing his jawline. His skin was warm, a hint of stubble rough beneath her fingertips. Jack remained perfectly still, as if afraid any movement might break the spell. "I've never met anyone who made being trapped in an elevator seem like good fortune," Olivia whispered, her eyes dropping to his lips. Jack's hand moved from her leg to her waist, drawing her closer. "I've never wanted to kiss someone as much as I want to kiss you right now," he admitted, his breath warm against her face. "What's stopping you?" Olivia asked, surprising herself again with her directness. That was all the invitation Jack needed. He closed the distance between them, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened. Olivia's arms wrapped around his neck as she responded eagerly, years of passing glances and secret curiosity finally finding release. His hands slid up her back, pulling her closer until she was almost in his lap. The heat in the elevator seemed to intensify, but Olivia no longer cared about the temperature. All she could focus on was the way Jack's mouth moved against hers, the feel of his body so close to hers. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Jack rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "I've been wanting to do that since the first time I saw you in the lobby 3 years ago," he confessed. Olivia smiled, her fingers playing with the hair at the nape of his neck. "I wish you hadn't waited so long." "Me too," he said, pulling back to look at her. His eyes were dark with desire, his lips slightly swollen from their kiss. "But maybe we're making up for lost time." As if on cue, the elevator shifted again, making a grinding noise. Olivia clutched Jack's shoulders, momentarily afraid they might fall, but the elevator merely settled once more. "Don't worry," Jack said, his arms tightening around her. "I've got you." And as he pulled her in for another kiss, Olivia believed him completely. The night stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities she had never dared to imagine before, being trapped between floors with the man she had secretly watched for years. Time seemed to stand still as Olivia and Jack continued to explore each other with increasingly passionate kisses. His hands roamed her back, tangling in her hair, while hers moved across his chest, feeling the firm muscles beneath his shirt. The small space of the elevator, once confining, now felt like the most intimate place in the world. "I should probably tell you something," Jack said, pulling back slightly, his breathing uneven. "I broke up with someone about 2 months ago. It wasn't serious, but I want to be honest with you." Olivia appreciated his candor, her hand resting on his chest where she could feel his heart beating rapidly. "I haven't dated anyone in almost a year," she admitted. "Work has been my excuse, but the truth is I've been waiting for something that feels right." "And does this feel right?" Jack asked, his eyes searching hers in the dim blue light. Instead of answering with words, Olivia kissed him again, deeper this time, letting her body press against his. She felt his sharp intake of breath, his arms tightening around her waist. "I'll take that as a yes," he murmured against her lips, a smile in his voice. The digital clock now read 2:18 a.m. The storm outside had quieted, but the rain still pattered softly against the building. Inside the elevator, the temperature continued to rise, partly from the failing ventilation system and partly from the heat generating between them. Jack slowly moved his lips from hers, trailing kisses along her jaw and down her neck. Olivia tilted her head back, her eyes closed, lost in the sensation. His mouth found a sensitive spot just below her ear, and she couldn't hold back a soft moan. "I've imagined this," Jack confessed, his voice low and husky against her skin. "Seeing you in the hallway, in the lobby, I've thought about what it would be like to be with you." His words sent a thrill through Olivia. "Show me," she whispered, surprising herself with her boldness. "Show me what you imagined." Jack looked at her, his eyes dark with desire but also questioning. "Are you sure?" In answer, Olivia reached for the buttons of her blouse, slowly undoing them one by one. Jack watched, transfixed, as she revealed a simple lace bra underneath. The emergency lights cast blue shadows across her skin, and she felt beautiful under his gaze. "You're even more gorgeous than I imagined," Jack said, his voice filled with awe. He reached out, his fingers tracing the curve of her collarbone, then lower, following the edge of her bra. Olivia shivered under his touch, her body responding with a heat that had nothing to do with the temperature in the elevator. When his hand cupped her breast, she arched into his touch, wanting more. Jack lowered his head, placing soft kisses along her shoulder, then down to the swell of her breast above the lace. Olivia's fingers wound into his hair, holding him close. "Your turn," she said, tugging at his shirt buttons. Jack quickly finished what she started, removing his shirt entirely. In the blue light, his chest and shoulders looked sculpted, perfect. Olivia ran her hands over his skin, feeling the warmth of him, the solid strength. "I never thought being stuck in an elevator could be so," she trailed off, unable to find the right word. "Serendipitous," Jack suggested, pulling her closer so their bare skin touched, sending electricity through both of them. "Exactly," Olivia agreed, reveling in the feel of him against her. Jack's hands moved to her waist, then around to the small of her back, holding her firmly against him. "Tell me what you want, Olivia," he said, his voice a low rumble that she could feel through his chest. "You," she said simply. "I want you." The honesty of her words seemed to break something loose in Jack. He kissed her with new urgency, his hands more insistent as they explored her body. Olivia matched his passion, all thoughts of their predicament, of the outside world, completely forgotten. The elevator made another slight movement, but neither of them noticed or cared. For now, this suspended space between floors was their entire world, a world of discovery, of long-suppressed desire finally finding expression. "I don't know what's going to happen when they finally rescue us," Jack said against her lips, "but I know I don't want this night to be the end of whatever this is between us." "It won't be," Olivia promised, looking into his eyes. "This is just the beginning." And as she pulled him back to her, sealing that promise with another kiss, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that being trapped had set her free. The first hints of dawn filtered through the small gap between the elevator doors, casting a sliver of golden light into the blue-tinted space. Olivia lay in Jack's arms, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. His suit jacket was draped over them like a makeshift blanket. "Are you asleep?" Jack whispered, his fingers gently stroking her hair. "No," Olivia replied, tilting her head to look up at him. "Just thinking." "About what?" She smiled, tracing patterns on his bare chest with her fingertip. "How strange life is. Yesterday morning I hurried past you in the lobby without saying a word, and now you know what I look like without my clothes on," Jack finished with a grin, kissing the top of her head. Olivia laughed softly. "That's certainly part of it." The night had unfolded like a dream. Their passion had built slowly, then all at once, until there was no turning back. They had made love against the elevator wall, their bodies moving together in perfect rhythm, discovering each other in ways Olivia had never imagined possible with someone she had only truly met hours before. "Do you believe in fate?" Jack asked, his voice thoughtful in the quiet morning light. Olivia considered the question. "I never used to. But being trapped here with you, after 3 years of just passing each other by, it makes me wonder. Maybe the universe got tired of waiting for us to make a move," Jack suggested. "So it trapped us in a metal box and turned off the air conditioning?" Olivia teased, propping herself up on her elbow to look at him properly. In the mixed light of dawn and the emergency lamps, his features were softer, more vulnerable than they had been in the darkness. "The universe works in mysterious ways," Jack said with a laugh. Then, more seriously, "I don't want this to be just one night, Olivia." Her heart skipped a beat at his words. "I don't either. When we get out of here, let me take you on a real date. One that doesn't involve being trapped against our will." "I'd like that," Olivia said, leaning down to kiss him softly. The kiss deepened, and Olivia felt desire building again despite the hours they had spent exploring each other's bodies. Jack's hands slid up her sides, his touch both familiar and thrilling. "Again?" he asked against her lips, his voice filled with a mixture of surprise and desire. "Again," she confirmed, straddling his hips. This time she wanted to be in control, to show him just how much she wanted him. Jack's hands settled on her waist as she moved above him, setting a slow, deliberate pace. The growing light revealed more of him to her eyes, the strong line of his jaw, the curve of his shoulders, the look of wonder on his face as he watched her. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his hands moving up to cup her breasts. Olivia closed her eyes, giving herself over to the sensation. There was something incredibly liberating about being with Jack like this, about letting go of all her usual reservations and insecurities. In this suspended space between floors, between yesterday and tomorrow, she felt completely free. As their movements became more urgent, Olivia opened her eyes, wanting to see Jack's face. Their gazes locked, and she felt a connection that went beyond the physical, something she had never expected to find in an elevator with a man she barely knew. When release came, it washed over them both in waves, leaving them breathless and clinging to each other as if afraid the moment might slip away. Afterward, they lay together in comfortable silence, their bodies entwined. The light through the gap in the doors grew stronger, a reminder that the world outside still existed. "What do you think happens when they finally get us out of here?" Olivia asked, voicing the concern that had begun to form in the back of her mind. Jack's arms tightened around her. "We go on that date I promised you. Maybe we grab breakfast at that bakery we both love." "I meant, this has been so intense. What if it's different out there?" Jack turned to face her, his expression serious. "This might have started in here," he said, gesturing at the elevator around them, "but it doesn't have to end when those doors open." Olivia wanted to believe him, and as he kissed her again, softly and sweetly, she allowed herself to hope that what they had found in this unexpected night would survive in the light of day. The sudden sound of voices and machinery outside the elevator made Olivia and Jack jump apart. They scrambled to dress, fumbling with buttons and zippers in the growing light. "Hello, is anyone in there?" A voice called through the gap in the doors. "Yes, we're here," Jack called back, helping Olivia with the last buttons of her blouse. "We've been stuck all night. Maintenance here. Power's back up in most of the building. We'll have you out in about 10 minutes, the voice replied. Olivia and Jack exchanged a look, part relief, part regret that their time alone was ending. The bubble they had existed in for the past 12 hours was about to burst, and reality would come flooding back in. "Your hair," Jack whispered, reaching out to smooth the tangled section. His touch was gentle, almost reverent. "Thanks," Olivia said, suddenly feeling shy. It seemed absurd to be embarrassed now, after everything they had shared during the night, but the approaching return to the real world made her uncertain. Jack seemed to sense her unease. "Hey," he said softly, taking her hand. "Nothing changes. Not for me." Olivia squeezed his hand, wanting to believe him. "It's just, out there, we'll have to figure out what this is. In here, it was simple. It can be simple out there too," Jack insisted. "I like you, Olivia. I liked you before we got stuck in here, and I definitely like you now." His smile was warm, reassuring. The sounds of work outside grew louder. They could hear drills and the metallic clang of tools against the elevator doors. "Almost there, folks," the maintenance worker called. "Stand back from the doors." Jack helped Olivia to her feet, and they moved to the back wall of the elevator. She glanced at him, taking in his rumpled appearance, shirt wrinkled, hair mussed, a hint of stubble darkening his jaw. Despite it all, he looked impossibly handsome. "I must look a mess," Olivia said, trying to smooth her own clothing. "You look beautiful," Jack replied without hesitation. "Though maybe a little like you spent the night in an elevator." he added with a teasing smile. Olivia laughed, feeling some of the tension leave her body. So do you. The elevator doors began to part, forced open by hydraulic tools. Light flooded in, making them squint after so many hours in the dim blue emergency lighting. As the gap widened, they could see several people on the other side, maintenance workers in uniforms, the building manager looking concerned, and a few curious residents who had gathered to watch the rescue. You two okay in there? The building manager asked, peering in at them. We're fine, Jack answered for both of them, just ready to get out. When the doors were open wide enough, Jack gestured for Olivia to go first. She stepped through, acutely aware of the eyes on her, wondering if her night with Jack was somehow written all over her face. Ms. Matthews, Mr. Bennett, I'm so sorry about this, the building manager said, clearly anxious about potential complaints. The storm knocked out power to half the neighborhood. We had crews working all night, but... It's fine, Olivia interrupted. These things happen. She couldn't bring herself to look at Jack, suddenly overwhelmed by the awkwardness of the situation. They had been so intimate, and now they were standing in the hallway with an audience, pretending nothing had happened. Well, I'll make sure you both receive compensation for this inconvenience, the manager continued. And if there's anything else you need. Actually, Jack cut in, I could use a shower and some breakfast. I'm sure Ms. Matthews feels the same way. The manager nodded, still looking worried. Of course. Again, we're so sorry. The crowd began to disperse, and Olivia finally risked a glance at Jack. He was already looking at her, his expression unreadable. So, he said quietly, once the others had moved far enough away. So, Olivia echoed, not knowing what else to say. Breakfast at the bakery? Jack asked, his voice casual but his eyes searching hers. After we've both had a chance to clean up? Olivia hesitated. Part of her wanted to rush back to her apartment, to hide away and process everything that had happened, but a stronger part didn't want to let go of what they had found. I'd like that, she said finally. Relief washed over Jack's face. 1 hour? Olivia nodded, a small smile forming. 1 hour. As they walked to their respective apartments, Olivia wondered if what had seemed so clear and right in the elevator could survive in the harsh light of day. She wanted to believe it could, but only time would tell. Olivia stood under the hot shower, letting the water wash away the night spent in the elevator. As she shampooed her hair, memories of Jack's hands, his lips, his whispered words flooded back. She closed her eyes, half expecting to find herself back in that small space with him when she opened them again. Instead, she was in her familiar bathroom, alone with her thoughts. Was she crazy to meet him for breakfast? Maybe what happened between them was just the result of being trapped together. Heightened emotions, the intimacy of confinement, the thrill of the unexpected. In the real world, would they have anything to say to each other? After drying off, Olivia stood in front of her closet, suddenly anxious about what to wear. She finally settled on a simple sundress, casual enough for the neighborhood bakery, but pretty enough to show she had made an effort. As she applied a touch of makeup, she told herself that whatever happened, she wouldn't regret the night they shared. Exactly 1 hour after they parted, Olivia walked into the bakery with the blue awning. Her eyes immediately found Jack, who was already seated at a small table by the window. He had showered and changed into fresh clothes, his hair still slightly damp. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that erased all her doubts. I was afraid you might not come, he admitted as she sat down across from him. I thought about it, Olivia said honestly. This all feels a bit surreal. Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. I know. I keep thinking about how many times I've seen you in the building, always wanting to talk to you but never finding the courage. And now we've seen each other naked. Olivia finished, lowering her voice with a small laugh. That too, Jack said, smiling. Though that's not the main thing I was thinking about. He reached across the table, his fingers lightly touching hers. I was thinking about how easy it was to talk to you, once we finally started. A waitress came to take their order, 2 coffees and cinnamon rolls, their shared favorite. When she left, Jack continued. Last night wasn't just physical for me, Olivia. I mean, that part was amazing, he added with a grin, but it was everything else too. I feel like I know you better after 12 hours in an elevator than I know people I've worked with for years. Olivia felt something warm unfurl in her chest. I feel the same way, but I'm also scared, she admitted. What if we can't recapture that outside the elevator? What if it was just the situation? Then we create new situations, Jack said simply. We get to know each other in coffee shops and parks and restaurants. We build something real, step by step. Their coffee and rolls arrived, steam rising from the mugs, icing melting on the warm pastry. They ate in comfortable silence for a moment, the familiar tastes somehow new and special when shared together. I have a crazy idea, Jack said suddenly. What's that? Let's not go back to the building right away. Let's spend the day together. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people getting to know each other in the daylight. Olivia considered his suggestion. Her Saturday stretched empty before her. Laundry, maybe some work she'd had brought home. Nothing that couldn't wait. What did you have in mind? There's an art festival in the park today. Then maybe lunch, a walk by the river. We could make it up as we go. The spontaneity of it appealed to her, so different from her usually planned, orderly life. I'd like that. As they left the bakery together, Jack reached for her hand. His touch was different in the daylight. Less urgent, more gentle, but no less thrilling. They walked toward the park, talking easily about everything and nothing. A sudden spring shower caught them halfway there. Without speaking, they both started to run, laughing as raindrops soaked them for the second time in 24 hours. Taking shelter under a store awning, Jack pulled Olivia close. You know what this reminds me of? He asked, brushing a wet strand of hair from her face. What? Last night, the storm, getting caught in the rain. His eyes held hers, finding something unexpected. Olivia rose on her tiptoes and kissed him, not caring who might see. When they broke apart, she smiled. I think I've developed a fondness for rainy days. Me too, Jack agreed, wrapping an arm around her waist as they continued their walk. As the day stretched before them, full of possibilities, Olivia realized that what had begun as being trapped had somehow set them both free, free to find each other, free to take a chance on something real, something that had been waiting for them all along, just a few floors apart.